So as you guys know, the new Mission Impossible movie opened up this last weekend, and its box office haul has been kind of divisive among critics. Some people are saying that this thing is a flop, comparing it to movies such as The Flash or Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny, and then other people are saying that it's just fine. I make it a goal of mine to kind of know what's going on with the box office on a week-by-week basis, so I've gone ahead and I've done the math, and I want to break down whether or not Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, that's a long title, whether or not that movie is a success or not. Because a lot of times it's not clear-cut based on its 3-day opening weekend. But just to break it down from a numbers standpoint, the 3-day opening weekend for this movie was at $56.2 million, but it did open on Wednesday at just shy of $80 million. So really we're working with a 5-day total here, which I think is going to be really important here moving forward, because if you just look at the 3-day total, you will see that it dropped $5 million from the previous Mission Impossible movie. Well, you know, people could have gone out and seen it Wednesday or Thursday night, really. Which I know on a typical 3-day opening weekend, you include Thursday night screenings. Well, this one also had Tuesday night, okay? So it's a true 5-day opening weekend. And right off the bat, this haul is a little bit lower than I expected. Just because, you know, Tom Cruise is kind of running on a high from Top Gun last year. I think a lot of people put a lot of stock into that, myself included, that was going to bleed over into Mission Impossible. I mean, Top Gun Maverick opened up to like a ridiculous number last year. Yeah, I'm just looking at my computer. It opened up to $126 million on the 3-day, but it opened up on Memorial Day weekend, so it made like $170 million over the 4-day, whatever it is. So I definitely thought that this movie would get like at least $80 million on the 3-day and then tip over $100 million with it being a 5-day opening weekend. So yeah, much less than what I expected personally. But this is pretty on par with what Mission Impossible movies have done in the past. I said it before that Mission Impossible Fallout, the last iteration in the franchise back in 2018, opened up to just $5 million more on a 3-day opening weekend than this movie did. So it made like $60 million. And traditionally, Mission Impossible just isn't the franchise that gets like $100 million opening weekends like Marvel, or I would say DC, but DC hasn't been doing that lately, but like a Marvel. And typically that's completely fine for this franchise because we get quality whenever we get a Mission Impossible movie, or that's been the trend of the last like 12 years. You know, they don't have to come out and make $100 million. They just have to last in the box office. I mean, the last one, it only dropped weekend over weekend, I think like 42%. Top Gun Maverick dropped 28%, and at this point, Tom Cruise is kind of a brand of it, in it of himself, I guess. And the last Mission Impossible movie opened up to that $60 million. It ended up making just shy of $800 million worldwide. So I think Dead Reckoning will be fine in the long term, but it is going to be very interesting to see how it turns out in its second weekend, because like I said, Fallout dropped like 42%, which is a fantastic weekend over weekend drop for a major blockbuster franchise. But this movie has to compete with Barbie and Oppenheimer in its second weekend, which is going to be a real uphill battle for it. Those movies seem like they're going to make a ton of money at the box office. But you just simply never know with this kind of thing. Usually whenever it comes to movie theaters, if people go see a good movie at a theater, they have a good time, they tend to go see more movies at theaters. So maybe you get someone in the theater to go see Barbie or Oppenheimer this weekend, and they're like, man, I love going to the movie theater. Doesn't Tom Cruise have a new Mission Impossible movie? Let's go see that. So it'll be really interesting in its second weekend. I think that they were really banking on a big opening weekend here, especially with Tom Cruise being as big as he is right now. And unfortunately, it just didn't seem to translate as much as a lot of people thought it would. So now if we move into profitability for this movie, because what is a flop at the end of the day? It's a movie that loses money for the studio. I went ahead and I broke down just what exactly the studio needs to make in order to break even for this movie, and its production cost was at $291 million, by far the biggest of the franchise. So, you know, that doesn't include marketing costs, and then obviously the theaters have to get it cut. So whenever I broke down, what exactly the studios need to make from this movie, I estimated it out to be about $700 million. And right now, after its opening weekend with a 5-day weekend, it's sitting at $235 million worldwide. So like I said before, Tom Cruise movies as of late, they tend to have really good legs, and this movie is being praised by audiences and critics. So I do think it's going to last in the box office. It is kind of getting wrecked by Barbie and Oppenheimer in its second weekend, but I do think it's going to last in the movie theater because at the end of the day, it's a good movie and people want to go see a good movie whenever they go to the theater. The real issue for me here is Mission Impossible Fallout's budget was $100 million cheaper. That movie made just shy of $800 million, and Dead Reckoning needs to make like $700 million. So I don't understand why the studio upped the budget that much. I mean, I understand the bankability of Tom Cruise, but keep in mind, the production for this was going on before Top Gun Maverick was a massive hit. They didn't film this movie yesterday. They've been in production. This is one of the biggest productions that went on after the pandemic started. I think they started back up in August of 2020. So, they didn't know that Top Gun Maverick was going to be the movie of 2022. And the production budget just blew up. Maybe that was because of COVID. But yeah, the production budget being $100 million more expensive may be what does this movie in. And we live in a world where Mission Impossible 7 might not make a profit. Again, there's a lot that still needs to happen before I'm ready to say if this thing was a flop or not. We need to see if this movie ends up having legs. What I don't like is people lumping this in with Dial of Destiny and The Flash. Because the biggest thing that sets this movie apart from those two films is this is a praised movie by critics and audiences. People love this movie. Indiana Jones was heavily divisive. I didn't like it personally, as was The Flash. A lot of people were clowning on The Flash. I personally loved The Flash. But those movies opened up to a similar 3-day opening weekend, with Indiana Jones opening up to $60 million and The Flash at $55. But I just think this movie will have better legs than those two. Because at the end of the day, the quality is what's going to help this movie more than anything else. Regardless of the box office haul, I think that the quality of this movie is what's going to help its sequel whenever it comes out next year. Because keep in mind, it's been 5 years since the last time we saw a Mission Impossible movie. Well, now audiences are going to be coming off of the high of this movie. They tee up the next one really well, and we only have to wait a year. So I do think the next one is going to perform better than this because they, at the end of the day, made a good movie. I do feel like, though, we need to start reining in the budgets on some of these major blockbusters because you get a movie like this, or, Fast X is like the best example, where that production budget was like $350 million for some reason, and that movie made like $700 million. That's like a dream for any movie, but the problem is, your movie costs so much, you're not going to make any money. And I think it's becoming clear that audiences just aren't catching up to studios upping the budget of these major Hollywood blockbusters at this degree. There's a lot of other factors that play into this because, we have some other major blockbusters that came out and, ended up making money, and they cost, $250 million to make. But it's just unfortunate to see a movie that's as good as Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 not be able to definitely be profitable. There's definitely going to be more to say about this. We just got to let the next weekend play out. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments if you've seen Dead Reckoning. Are you surprised about its box office haul? And let me know what you think about this video. Thanks. Leave a like and subscribe for more.